Choosing between Kindle and Kobo is like choosing between iPhone and Android. They do the same thing, but in fundamentally different ways. I've been fortunate enough to use every single Kindle and Kobo that's come out in the past 5 years now, so I have a pretty good grasp on how all these ecosystems work. When it comes down to it, I think there's 3 main differences between Kindle and Kobo that you have to know about, and be sure to watch till the end because that last point is one that no one really talks about. Alright, the first and biggest difference between Kindle and Kobo is the actual way you get books onto your e-reader. You see, if you decide to buy a Kindle, you're going to be locked into Amazon's bookstore. They designed these Kindles in a way where you actually have to buy every single book you want to read from the Amazon bookstore and read it on your Kindle. If you're already using Amazon quite a bit and don't mind using the Kindle bookstore for all your books, this really isn't a big deal. The benefit of using the Kindle ecosystem is it's very seamless. All your books will be in sync between all your apps and devices. It just works very well. But let's say you live somewhere in the world where Amazon is not as popular, or maybe you've already purchased some ebooks elsewhere that you want to read on your e-reader, or maybe you just don't want to be buying all your books to begin with. Then what do? This is where the Kindle ecosystem starts to fall apart. They do have the Send to Kindle feature, which will allow you to send personal files like PDFs and EPUBs onto your Kindle, but this is definitely more of a workaround than a native feature. On top of that, Amazon also does not play very well with public libraries. You can't actually borrow a library book directly on the Kindle. You can technically do it on a computer, but from my understanding, it really only works in America, and it's not very user-friendly if you ask me as well. I've tried it a few times. It's almost like they're making it intentionally difficult to borrow books and they want you to buy all your books. Over in the world of Kobo, things are done a bit differently. Now they do also have the Kobo bookstore, which is very similar to the Kindle bookstore, but the selection is much smaller compared to Amazon's. But they do make up for this by having much more flexibility for getting books onto your device in other ways. For starters, Kobo has native EPUB support, so if you already have a library of ebook files on your computer, maybe you're using an app like Calibre for example, it is much easier to drag and drop all your EPUB files directly onto your Kobo without any kind of workaround whatsoever. And on top of that, on the device itself, you have native support for borrowing books from your public library using the app called Libby. The other amazing thing about Kobo is they do a very good job of integrating with public libraries from different regions around the world. They actually go out of their way to make sure they can connect to all these libraries in different countries, and that makes it very popular to use outside of America. So to recap this section, if you value simplicity and don't mind buying all your books from Amazon, go with the Kindle. But if you want more flexibility and want to be able to borrow books from a library, use a Kobo. Now really quick before going into the next section of this video, I want to do a quick shout out for one of my books that I've written called Just One More Chapter. Regardless of whether you get a Kobo or Kindle, at the end of the day, what you're going to want to do is build a daily reading habit. All of the tech in the world will not do that part for you. In this short book that I've written, I do the best job that I can to get all the reading tips and tricks that I've learned over the past 5 years of being a bookworm and put them into this short book for you to learn from. It does a really good job, I hope, in helping you build that daily reading habit so you can read more books on a regular basis. If you are interested in reading more often and want to support a creator like me, link down below for all the details. The next major difference between Kindle and Kobo is how they handle features and integrations. Now, just like before, both ecosystems go about this in radically different ways. Let me start with Kobo this time. Kobo does a wonderful job of integrating with apps like Instapaper, so you can read your newsletters and articles and stuff like that from the web directly on your Kobo. And depending which device you get, you can also integrate with apps like Dropbox and Google Drive to send files directly over to your Kobo. Kobo also has a better set of reading features as well. I really do like the progress bar at the bottom of the page. When you're reading a Kobo book, you can see how far you are into the book that you're reading. They also have reading metrics and stats you can look into on the device so you can see how much you've been reading as a whole and your reading habit numbers and all of that. I love that feature so much because it gamifies the habit of reading. Over in the world of Kindle, they have things that are similar but not quite the same. They just recently integrated with Microsoft Office as well as Google Drive, but those two apps are really meant for the Kindle Scribe, which is for note-taking purposes, not for reading books. Kindle also has an integration with an app called Goodreads, which is a social media app for bookworms, and it's owned by Amazon as well. And if you ask me, it's probably one of the worst social media websites you'll ever use, but I continue continue to use it because it's natively built into the Kindle and directly connects to track which books I've read and finished. When it comes to reading features, I do think Kobo has a slight edge in this category, but I don't think it's a deal breaker at all. Kindle has all the essentials, and that's what matters. The last major difference between Kindle and Kobo is something I don't think many people talk about and more people should talk about, is the note-taking experience on both these platforms. Now, when I talk about note-taking, I am not referring to the handwritten notes that you can take, for example, on the Kindle Scribe or the Kobo Ellipsa. What I'm actually referring to is using your finger to highlight and typing in notes with the on-screen keyboard. That is the thing that I use mostly on all my devices for taking notes. If you ask me, I think this is the category where Kobo really does fall short. Hold on one second, we have to make a correction. Hello from the future over here. I made a mistake while recording this, so 1 second. Alright, so when I first recorded this video last week, I had not used my Kobo in a little while, and it turns out over the past few months, at some point, some updates came out that actually changed the way that I see the Kobo note-taking experience. Originally, I went on this rant of how bad highlighting is on a Kobo. For example, previously there was no integration with Readwise, so there was no way to export all your highlights to the service that I rely so heavily on, and know a lot of other people do as well. But they've since updated that integration to work very flawlessly to the point where it's very comparable to the Kindle one. On top of that, I was under the impression that taking highlights on a Kobo is not nearly as nice as taking highlights on a Kindle. When you make that finger gesture across a sentence or a paragraph, it turns out they actually work very similarly. I'm not too sure if Kobo actually updated this or if I'm just remembering it wrong from last time I used it, but there is one difference I've seen. The Kobo does have a bit more ghosting, so you see a lot more messed up highlights around the page if you're going back and forth undoing highlights, for example, which I do occasionally as well, whereas Kindle does not have that ghosting problem nearly as much. So at the end of the day, both Kindle and Kobo are both wonderful options. It really comes down to your personal preference. But if you want to learn more about my note-taking system and how I highlight on a Kindle or a Kobo, link for my video on the screen right now that talks about how I use AI and all these tools in today's world for reading better as a bookworm. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.